In a world where dating advice often feels like a battlefield of strategies and manipulations, there's one truth that cuts deeper than any tactic ever could. Real attraction isn't something you chase, it's something you become. Welcome to this journey of becoming the man women feel magnetically drawn to. This video is not only about transforming your relationships, it's about changing your life. And if you're someone who's ready to stop seeking and start becoming, you're exactly where you need to be. While you're here, support this channel. It helps us share this message with thousands, even millions, of men and women who are lost in confusion, heartbreak, and frustration. Your support means more than views or likes. It brings life-changing insight to someone who needs it most. Redefining detachment. It's not what you think. The idea of detachment has been misunderstood for generations. For many people, especially men who genuinely want to love and be loved, the word itself carries negative weight. It sounds like giving up. It sounds like becoming emotionally unavailable. It sounds like the kind of distant man who shuts down instead of showing up, who pulls away when things get real, who avoids emotional connection because it feels too vulnerable. And if you've ever loved someone deeply, you might think that detaching means betraying that love. You might fear that being detached makes you cold, distant, even heartless. But the truth is, that's not detachment at all. That's avoidance. That's fear hiding behind silence. That's emotional shutdown, disguised as strength. And what I'm inviting you to see, really see, is that true detachment, the kind that makes you profoundly magnetic to a woman, has absolutely nothing to do with coldness. In fact, it has everything to do with emotional power. Real detachment is not about pushing someone away. It's about never pushing yourself away to keep someone close. It's about standing rooted in who you are, regardless of how someone else feels about you that day. It means your sense of self, your peace, your value, your identity, doesn't rise and fall depending on whether she texts back, whether she wants to see you tonight, whether she says, "I love you," or doesn't. Your internal world remains stable, calm, undisturbed by every emotional gust of wind that comes from outside of you. You move through life with a stillness that says, "I am already enough," not in arrogance, but in quiet truth. Women feel this. They sense it on a deep, almost primal level. When you're emotionally sovereign, when your energy isn't grasping or begging for closeness, it creates a very powerful reaction in her. It doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like safety. It feels like the calm, grounded presence she didn't know she was craving. It feels like finally being around someone who doesn't need her to regulate his own anxiety. And that is so rare, it becomes irresistible. Think about how most men respond to relationship stress. They overtext, they over-explain, they chase, they apologize for being themselves. They ask too many questions, trying to gain reassurance. They try to manage her emotions to feel secure in themselves. It's not malicious, it's human. But when you do that, you're showing her that your emotional state depends on her behavior. And over time, that doesn't feel like love. It feels like pressure. It feels like a burden. She begins to feel like she can't just exist freely. She must constantly consider how her moods will affect you. And that makes her pull away, not because she doesn't care, but because she needs air. She needs space. Now contrast that with a man who is detached, not because he's checked out, but because he's deeply checked in to himself. He doesn't flinch when she needs space. He doesn't crumble when she's upset. He doesn't beg when she needs time. He remains grounded. He listens. He breathes. He responds with presence, not panic. He doesn't chase her when she pulls away. He doesn't try to convince her to stay. He stands in himself and allows her the freedom to come close or step back, because he knows that no matter what she chooses, he doesn't lose himself in the process. This kind of detachment is powerful. It doesn't come from hardness, it comes from strength. It's not born from bitterness, it's born from self-respect. And it is incredibly attractive because it communicates something that words never can. I don't need you to be okay, but I choose to love you anyway. It creates mystery. It creates tension, the healthy kind. She doesn't quite know why she wants to be closer to you, but she does. She feels safe, yet curious. Seen, yet free. Held, yet not owned. That space, that delicate space between closeness and freedom, is where real attraction lives. That's where relationships stop feeling like pressure and start feeling like a shared dance. It's not you chasing her, it's both of you moving freely toward each other, again and again, because you want to, not because you have to. And here's what makes this so vital. A man who is emotionally sovereign doesn't have to say, I'm different. She can feel it. In the way you breathe, in the way you pause, in the way you listen without rushing to fix, in the way your eyes stay soft, even when she's angry, in the way your hands remain still, even when the conversation gets hard, in the way you can let her go for a moment and trust that if she wants to come back, she will. This is what makes detachment so powerful. It doesn't shut love out, it protects it. It allows love to breathe, to grow, to deepen. Because when you no longer need her to stay, she finally feels safe to choose you. Not out of fear, not out of obligation, but because being near your stillness feels like coming home. Reactive versus rooted, the invisible shift. She feels. There comes a moment in almost every man's life when he feels it. That quiet, creeping sense that something is changing. She's not texting back with the same warmth. Her voice feels different. Her eyes don't light up the way they used to. And even though nothing dramatic has happened, you feel it. A shift in her energy. She seems more distant, more preoccupied, less invested. And without even realizing it, panic starts to set in. It begins subtly. Maybe you check your phone a little more often. Maybe you reread your messages before sending them. Maybe you overthink the timing of your responses, trying to avoid saying the wrong thing. But slowly, it begins to consume you. The fear of losing her becomes louder than your own voice. So you start doing more. You reach out more often, you write longer messages, you offer to help with things she never asked for. You apologize for things that didn't even need an apology. You try to explain how much she means to you, how much you care, how much you don't want to lose her. You might even go out of your way to do things for her, hoping that your actions will remind her of the man she fell for. You call it love. You call it effort. But what you're really doing is chasing. And here's the hard truth. She can feel it. Even if you say all the right things, even if your words are kind and thoughtful and caring, she can feel the shift in your energy. It's no longer steady. It's no longer calm. It's anxious. It's needy. It's the energy of a man who has stepped out of himself in an effort to hold on to something he fears losing. And that shift changes everything. Because women are deeply intuitive when it comes to emotional presence. They don't just listen to what you say, they feel who you are. When your presence starts to dissolve into panic, when your stability gets replaced with need, when your calm becomes clinging, something inside her recoils. It's not that she stops caring, it's that the dynamic of the relationship has changed. She no longer feels like she's with the grounded, self-possessed man she was once drawn to. She now feels like she's become responsible for your emotional well-being. And that is not attractive. It's exhausting. This is where the difference between a reactive man and a rooted man becomes crystal clear. A reactive man is constantly shaken by the winds of emotion. When something in the relationship feels uncertain, his entire sense of self is threatened. He overanalyzes every word, every glance, every pause in communication. He reads between the lines, searching for clues to confirm his fear. He reacts to silence with panic, to distance with desperation. He starts giving more and more, not because it's needed, but because he's trying to secure her love. As if love is something you earn by proving you're enough. He becomes overly available, overly agreeable, overly apologetic. His intention might be pure, he just wants to make her happy. But the energy behind it is suffocating. It doesn't make her feel desired, it makes her feel responsible. And no woman wants to feel like she's being clung to for emotional survival. Now compare that to a rooted man. This man is unshakable in the face of uncertainty. He notices when something feels different, but he doesn't collapse into it. He doesn't overreact. He doesn't spiral into fear. Instead, he pauses. He breathes. He checks in with himself before checking in with her. He remembers who he is, what he values, and what he's building, with or without her. He doesn't chase because he understands that real connection is not maintained through force or performance. It's sustained through truth. If something is off, he addresses it with calm clarity. If she needs space, he gives it without resentment. If she pulls away, he holds his center. He doesn't try to manipulate the moment to regain control. He trusts the flow of the relationship, and more importantly, he trusts himself. This isn't indifference. This isn't emotional distance. This is love with boundaries. This is presence with self-respect. This is strength without control. A rooted man loves fully, but he never loses himself in that love. He doesn't twist himself to maintain closeness. He doesn't perform to avoid conflict. He shows up as he is, whole, steady, and available, not because he's trying to win her, but because he already knows his value. He's not trying to be chosen. He has already chosen himself. And that energy is rare, so rare that when a woman feels it, something shifts in her too. She starts to trust him more deeply. She feels safer, not because he's always available, but because his energy doesn't demand anything from her. She knows that he loves her, but she also knows that his world doesn't collapse without her. That gives her freedom, and in that freedom, attraction grows. She leans in, not because he chased her, but because she feels magnetized by his calm. She respects his boundaries. She honors his presence. She values his truth. And here's the beauty of being rooted. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to convince her that you're different from other men. You don't need to make promises or overperform. She feels the difference in the way you handle disagreement, in the way you remain composed when things get hard, in the way you walk away from what doesn't align with your values, not with anger, but with grace. The man who remains rooted in himself while the world around him reacts in chaos becomes unforgettable. Not because he's louder, not because he's tougher, but because his energy says, I know who I am, and I don't lose myself trying to keep love that was never meant to be forced. The energy of attraction. What makes her? Lean in attraction doesn't bloom from effort alone. It's not about how many sweet messages you send, how quickly you reply, how often you compliment her, or how available you make yourself. These things, while nice, are not what make a woman feel that irresistible pull toward a man. In fact, when those actions are driven by anxiety, fear, or the desperate desire to keep her close, they often backfire. They create the opposite of attraction. They create pressure. They create emotional dependence. They make her feel like your happiness is tied to her every move. And that's not magnetic. That's heavy. And when love begins to feel heavy, it begins to drift. Because real attraction lives in a space most people avoid. Emotional distance. Not coldness, not indifference, but space. The healthy, sacred kind of space where a woman gets to feel her own desire rise toward you, rather than being dragged into your emotional orbit. This is where we talk about polarity, one of the most powerful forces in attraction. Polarity is the invisible tension between two people who are both emotionally whole, both grounded in their own lives, and yet feel drawn to each other, not out of need, but out of choice. It's not built on constant closeness. It's built on contrast. The difference in energy, the dynamic balance between strength and softness, stillness and movement, giving and receiving, pursuit and retreat. When you're always available, always trying, always adjusting your energy to make her feel secure, you collapse the polarity, you flatten the dynamic, and with it, you lose the tension that keeps desire alive. So many men unknowingly destroy attraction by constantly managing it. They think, if I stay close, she'll stay close. So they text right away. They check in constantly. They try to anticipate her needs. They over-explain their feelings. They apologize for expressing boundaries. All in the name of love. But love does not thrive in the absence of space. It needs oxygen. It needs mystery. It needs room to breathe. When you take that away, you smother the very thing you're trying to hold on to. Here's the paradox that most men don't understand. When a woman pulls away, it's often not because she's trying to leave. It's because she needs to feel your energy without it reaching for her. She needs to know, deep down, whether you're a man who can hold his own when the emotional waters rise, whether you crumble or whether you breathe, whether you chase or whether you stay grounded. She's not testing you because she wants to play games. She's feeling her way into who you really are underneath the surface. Because in those uncertain moments, when you're not getting what you want, your real self shows up. And that's what tells her whether you're a man she can trust with her heart. So, what does the rooted man do when this moment comes? He doesn't panic. He doesn't beg for closeness. He doesn't jump to fix the emotional distance. He doesn't flood her inbox with affirmations of love and longing. He does something most men have never been taught to do. He holds still. He gives space. He allows the silence to exist without assigning it meaning. He lets her have her moment, her mood, her emotion, without making it about his worth. And in doing so, he does something far more powerful than any performance. He lets her feel the weight of his presence by not trying to control her response. That space, the quiet space between you, becomes the birthplace of desire, because in that space, she gets to wonder, she gets to miss you, she gets to reflect on how she feels when she's not wrapped up in your energy. And that reflection can only happen if you're not filling every silence with attempts to fix or force closeness. It is in your stillness that she rediscovers her pull toward you. It is in your non-reactivity that she feels trust building. And it is in your emotional independence that she begins to lean in. Not because she feels pressured to, but because she wants to. This is not about being distant. It's not about punishing her with withdrawal. It's about being so emotionally secure that you don't collapse when connection becomes uncertain. It's about allowing the natural rhythm of space and closeness to happen without resistance. Most men struggle with this because their sense of worth is tied to how loved they feel in the moment. If she pulls away, they panic. If she's quiet, they assume something is wrong. But when your identity is anchored in your own center, you stop needing constant affirmation. You stop fearing space. You stop interpreting distance as danger. And that's what makes you rare. Because in today's world, where so many men are operating from emotional anxiety, where they base their confidence on how much a woman wants them, the man who stays still becomes magnetic. The man who holds his ground, not with arrogance, but with calm presence, becomes unforgettable. His silence is not empty. It's full of strength. His restraint is not disinterest. It's discipline. His stillness is not passivity. It's power. She feels it deeply, not in her mind, but in her body. It tells her that she is free. And when a woman feels free around you, she will move toward you. Not because she has to, but because the energy between you makes her want to. That's the art of polarity. That's the energy of attraction. It's not what you do that draws her in, it's who you are when you do nothing. The art of emotional self-control. There is a point in every relationship, sometimes early, sometimes after months, sometimes years, where the energy shifts. It doesn't announce itself with shouting or slamming doors. It doesn't come wrapped in a dramatic fight or tearful goodbye. No, it comes quietly. You notice the change first in the way she says your name, or doesn't. You feel it in the speed of her replies. The sparkle in her eyes when she looks at you isn't as bright. Her touch isn't as lingering. Her words feel different, shorter, colder, more distant. She's withdrawing, not completely, not obviously, but enough that your heart tightens, enough that your body knows something is off, even if your mind tries to deny it. And in that moment, that split second between sensing the shift and reacting to it, everything you've built is tested. Why presence is more powerful than performance. At the core of every meaningful relationship lies a quiet, powerful truth that most men never fully understand. The most magnetic force you can carry isn't in what you say, what you own, how you look, or how often you express your feelings. It's in your presence, not the kind of presence that demands attention with loud gestures or exaggerated confidence, but the kind that is so steady, so deeply rooted, so calmly self-assured that a woman can feel it before you speak. True presence is unshakable. It is silent, yet undeniable. It enters a room with you, surrounds you like an aura, and lingers in her memory long after you're gone. It's the calm in your eyes. It's the confidence in your stillness. It's the power in the space you're not trying to fill. A man who is truly magnetic doesn't need to be the loudest, the most charming, or the smartest. He doesn't feel the urge to explain himself constantly. He's not seeking constant validation, not adjusting his behavior to win someone over, not changing who he is to fit into the version he thinks someone else wants. His value is not negotiable. It's not earned through performance or acts of sacrifice. It's inherent. It's built from years of choosing himself. It's forged in the fires of self-awareness and self-respect. And because his sense of worth is no longer dependent on external approval, he becomes utterly captivating. This man doesn't need to try hard, and that's exactly why people want to be near him. When others react with emotional volatility, he remains composed. When chaos swirls around him, he becomes even more still. He doesn't chase energy, he attracts it, not through manipulation, but through consistency. And when a woman meets him, she knows she's encountering something different. He's not pulling her in with tactics. He's not showering her with attention to gain hers. He's simply there, whole, steady, and unmoved by the fear of rejection. And because of that, his attention becomes a gift, not a request. This is the paradox of magnetism. When you no longer need to be wanted, you become wanted. When you're no longer trying to impress, you impress more. When you stop chasing love as something to earn, you begin to embody love as something you already are. Women feel this shift on a visceral level. They sense the absence of need. They feel the emotional spaciousness you create. And in that space, something awakens: desire, curiosity, trust. Not because you told them who you are, but because you let them feel it. Most men in today's world are stuck in performance mode. They're trying to be good enough. They measure their worth by how many people approve of them, how much attention they receive, how much they're desired. They're acting, always acting charming, acting confident, acting like they don't care, or acting overly nice to be liked. But in all this performing, they lose the one thing that truly creates connection: authenticity. And no matter how polished your image is, people, especially emotionally tuned in women, will always feel when you're not being real. They may not know exactly what's off, but they'll sense the disconnect between your energy and your truth. A magnetic man is not mysterious because he's playing games. He's mysterious because he's deep. He doesn't hide himself to appear interesting. He's simply so secure in who he is that he doesn't feel the need to overshare. He's comfortable with silence. He doesn't interrupt emotional moments with insecurity. He doesn't rush to fill gaps in conversation. And because he doesn't reach for her approval, his presence carries a kind of still gravity, like a mountain, unmoved by the winds. This energy creates space, and in that space, she leans in. She becomes curious. She starts wondering who you really are. She asks questions. She reflects. She listens differently. You don't need to convince her of your worth, because she's already sensing it. Not from what you say, but from who you are when you're not saying anything at all. Your stillness, your clarity, your detachment from outcome. These things draw her in more than any perfect line ever could. And this is where true power lives, not in being above emotions, not in pretending you don't care, but in showing that you can care deeply without falling apart, that you can feel love without becoming consumed by it, that you can offer affection without trying to secure affection in return. You love from a full cup, not an empty one begging to be filled. So, how do you cultivate this kind of magnetic presence? You begin by choosing yourself again and again. You stop outsourcing your value to how she reacts. You stop bending your truth to fit in. You become comfortable in solitude. You learn to sit in silence and hear your own heart without needing someone else to validate it. You practice showing up as your truest, most grounded self, even when that means someone may walk away, because you know that who you are doesn't shrink when someone else doesn't see it. You know that your worth doesn't change because someone else didn't choose you. You know that presence, deep, authentic, and unwavering, is the most irresistible thing you could ever offer. And presence doesn't ask, it doesn't beg, it doesn't chase. Presence invites. It says, I am whole, I am steady, and if you'd like to come closer, I welcome you. That, more than charm, more than effort, more than words, is what stays with her. That's what she remembers. That's what makes her want to return to you, again and again. Not because you needed her to, but because being around you feels like home. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to give more. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to become the man who no longer seeks to be enough, because he already knows he is. Stop trying to chase love. Stand in love. Stand in yourself. Your energy should not say, please choose me. It should say, I choose myself. And if you want to walk beside me, I welcome you. That's the kind of presence the world is starving for. That's the kind of masculinity that doesn't dominate. It invites, doesn't beg, it attracts, doesn't control, it grounds. This message can change lives. If it moved you, if it spoke to your soul in a way most things don't, share it, subscribe, support this channel. Every like, every comment, every share brings this truth to someone who might be chasing approval, collapsing in silence, or feeling lost in relationships. Support helps us reach more people. It allows this work to grow and reach the hearts that need it most. If this video brought you clarity, imagine what it could do for someone else who's suffering silently. Be a part of that ripple. Support this message. Let's bring sovereignty back to the world, one grounded man at a time. If you stayed all the way to the end, drop a comment below and write empowered, so I know you're part of the few who don't just watch, you transform. Subscribe, share, and walk into the world today with calm power. Your presence is your legacy. You don't need to be chosen, you just need to become.